Sir Edwin, you can start.
Okay, so we have a critical mass present. Good. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Fellow FINEX members and our guests. Um, we welcome you to the ninth FINEX GMM meeting. But before we start, I would like to make some announcements. Number one, the Women in Finance Committee is inviting everyone to the Survival of the Fittest webinar. These three speakers are beautiful and empowered ladies. Ahem. In Philippine setting, talagang hawak ng ladies ang purse strings. So they are all empowered, who will discuss how they are staying afloat and flourishing in these difficult times. Okay, so let us listen to their words of wisdom on September the 16th at 2 p.m. I repeat, September the 16th at 2 p.m. Next, the EFA Asia will be holding a webinar about special purpose acquisition companies or SPACs. One of the speakers is our very own Billy Cortez. And this will be narrated by our beauteous Marilu Cristobal. And this will be on Friday at September 17th, 9 a.m. I repeat, Friday, September 17th at 9 a.m. This will be for the special purpose acquisition companies. Next, FINEX and the Makati Business Club Management Association of the Philippines and E22 Coalition is hosting a virtual event on Why Should I Vote? Part 2. This will be on Monday, September the 20th at 2 p.m. I repeat, Monday, September the 20th at 2 p.m. Students, first-time registrants, members of JFINEX, the general public is invited, including our friends in the military. They are most welcome to participate and listen to this webinar on Why Should I Vote? September 20th at 2 p.m. I repeat, September 20th at 2 p.m. The Arts Committee. Okay. The Arts Committee invites everyone to the Philippine Nostalgia and Japanese TV Voltes 5. Wow. Voltes 5. Let's vote in. Join Professor Carl Ian Cheng Chua of Ateneo de Manila. Oh, of course, Ateneo de Manila. They could afford those expensive robot figures. As he talks about how Philippine industry and consumers played active roles in making the Japanese culture popular that gave way to the Voltes 5 phenomenon of the 1970s. This is on September 24th at 2 p.m. Let's vote in. Okay, September 24th at 2 p.m. Please save the date for the FINEX annual conference. Okay, October 4th to October the 8th, 2021. The theme for this year's conference is Inclusive Disruption, Achieving a Sustainable Future in the New Frontier. Wow, that's a whole mouthful. I think I get the drift. Okay. The FINEX Week Committee is preparing a great lineup of speakers, so you better mark your calendars now, October 4th to October 8th, 2021. And then, FINEX is happy to announce that we have an incentive program that is returning, the return of the comeback for our incentive program. Under this program, recruitment of new members and attendance and active participation in FINEX activities and meetings will earn you a discount, which can be applied to your 2022 membership fee. With enough recruits, your 2022 membership fee may be free. For inquiries, you may send your email to LD Vizcaya. Can you flash that? Do you have a know of that? ldvizcaya@finex.org.ph. Okay. I repeat, you can get your membership fee free if you recruit enough members. So My idol, past President Ed Soriano, I think he recruited something like 600 or 700 members during his time. He probably will be able to register his grandchildren for free at FINEX, okay, with this discount scheme. So please recruit more members for FINEX and you get generous discounts. Now, I would like to encourage and acknowledge our year-round sponsors. First, our partner, Union Bank of the Philippines. Hey, proud Union Bank depositor for my meager funds. Okay. And then our platinum sponsor, LT Group Inc. and First Philippine Holdings Corporation. Yes. Thank you, platinum sponsors. And our diamond sponsor, Ayala Land. My gosh. There's Ayala Land. I wish I could afford their properties. But this is just a retired pensioner. So I will probably just have to dream all about their properties. But thank you very much, Diamond sponsor Ayala Land, for sponsoring us. And then our gold sponsors, United Auctioneers, there with their logo, UA, Converge ICT Solutions, SGV and Company, making or building a better working world, and Pilipinas Shell. Hey, Jeng, I also fill up with your expensive gas that I find it okay for my engines. Okay, that's those are our gold sponsors. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot Divina Law. My gosh, how could I forget you, Nilo? You still continue to proudly support FINEX. Thank you for your unwavering support, Nilo, and for your firm, Divina Law. They're one of our gold sponsors. Now, we have our patron sponsors, BPI, BDO, Cirtec Philippines, Holdings Philippines Corporation, and MegaWorld Prime, RFO, ready for occupancy. Great sponsors. Thank you very much, patron sponsors, for sponsoring us. And then we would like to acknowledge KPMG, RG Manobet and Company for sponsoring this year's annual CFO survey project. Thank you, KPMG, RG Manobet. And for the information of all those present, we will have a raffle after GMM, after the GMM. So we encourage our members to stay until the end of the program. Okay. Thank you. Are we ready now to call Mike? Are we ready to call on the president? Okay, Mr. President Francis Lim, Attorney Francis Lim, will you please call this meeting to order, Francis?
Okay, may I now call the meeting to order?
Okay, now that the meeting is called to order, may I encourage everybody to join and bow our heads as we bring this invocation or recite this invocation during this GMM. Heavenly Father, the truth is a rare commodity nowadays. We ask you to grant us the fortitude to speak the truth, to live the truth, and to propagate truth. Massive efforts and resources are concentrated in today's environment to lie, to deflect, or to obfuscate the truth. In some aspects of our existence, threats to life and safety are the price we pay to know and speak the truth. Grant us the grace to transcend all of these threats, and from our mouths and from our actions and from our way of life, let the truth be our guiding light. This simple prayer, we ask you to grant each and every one of us, Lord, that our walk through life be guided by the beacon of truth. Amen. May I now ask everybody to join and if you will, sing the national anthem. Thank you all. Now we come to the President's time. Francis, I give back the chair to you, please. Take charge of the President's time.
Thank you very much, Edwin, especially for that beautiful prayer. Okay. To our guest speaker, the Honorable COA Chairman Mike Aguinaldo, and panelists, past President Cora de la Paz and Eddie Yap, friends from the government and media, guests, my fellow FINEX members, good afternoon to all of you. I welcome you all to the 9th General Membership Meeting of FINEX for the year. I hope that you're all safe and healthy amidst the surge of COVID-19 cases due to the highly contagious Delta variant. Please take extra precaution because we have seen cases of the Delta variant attacking not only individual family members, but also the whole household. Last month, the issue between the Commission on Audit and the Executive Department was the talk of the town. With this, your organization is spearheaded and got 33 other business and professional organizations on August 21 to release a joint statement calling to uphold the independence and constitutional mandate of our Commission of Audit. Today, we're very fortunate. We have no less than the Honorable Chairman of COA, my colleague at the Ateneo Law School, Attorney Mike Aguinaldo, to explain to us the function of the Commission and the improvements he has implemented. This general membership meeting is publicly shared through our YouTube channel and Facebook page to ensure that everyone is properly informed and eradicate any misconception. My sincerest thanks to the Programs and Meetings Committee, led by Chair Nanette De Jesus, Vice Chair Tony Boy Onsiaco, and Lion Director Ed Desciao for today's very relevant session. Special mention goes to our EVP, Yuni Mata Perez, for moderating the session, and more importantly, for getting her classmate, Chair Aguinaldo, who really accepts speaking engagement before private sector groups to speak before us today. I would also like to thank our panelists for joining us and share with us their insights on the subject matter. Thank you, Edwin, for graciously acting as our MC today. May I now highlight what we did since the last August General Membership Meeting. On advocacy, FINEX continues to be at the forefront of national business and economic issues. In addition to the COA statement that I just mentioned, last week, we led the issuance of our appeal to the COMELEC to extend the voter registration, followed by a joint public statement. 24 business organizations and professional organizations, together with more than 80 colleges, universities, and educational institutions, join us in this undertaking. We hope that the COMELEC will heed our call. If granted, this will allow more qualified voters to get registered for the 2022 national, and local elections. This election is critical because the elected leaders will direct us toward the new normal. In relation to this, as a follow-through to the highly successful voter registration forum last August 27, with almost 3,000 Zoom participants, your organization will be conducting part 2 of this forum entitled, Why Should I Vote? On September 20 of September 20. This will be co-organized by Management Association of the Philippines, Makati Business Club, and of course, the Election 2022 Coalition. In part 1, we focus our attention or invitation to our FINEX members who will be voting for the first time. For this part 2, aside from the youth, we're likewise reaching out to students in different universities nationwide and to other qualified first-time voters. We hope that these individuals will exercise the right to suffrage. But before that, they should register. I have issued a personal appeal urging all of you to invite your colleagues, families, and friends to register for the 2022 election. I would like to thank the Good Governance Committee, led by Chair Rod Franco, Voter Registration Lead Kiel Lampa, Member Baby Nuesa, and Liaison Director Bing Matoto, Media Affairs Chair Wilma Miranda, and Member EJ Kuao Jansen, Junior FINEX Committee Chair Mildred Bitangol, and Liaison Director Benny, and FINEX Foundation Chair, past President Jen Pascual, for dedicating their time and efforts to this advocacy and activities. For the past month, FINEX also led the issuance of the joint statement on COVID-19 claims by healthcare providers, which 20 other organizations co-signed on August 25. On August 31, FINEX likewise signed a joint statement calling Congress to approve key economic reforms, especially the public services amendments. I understand that the amendments to the Foreign Investment Act was approved by the Senate yesterday, and the amendments to the PSA will likely be approved this afternoon. Again, thank you to the National Affairs Committee led by Governor Saite Tanco, Vice Chair Risa Mandarin, and Liaison Director Toti Benson, and the relevant committees for supporting these advocacies and public statements. On past events, since our last GMM on August 18, our committees have been very active in conducting webinars and online socials and meetings. These are now being flashed on the board, on the screen. Thank you to the Capital Market Development Committee led by Project Lead, Vice President Mike Gorin, Chair Tess Rabalo, Vice Chair Malu Cristobal, and Liaison Director Sandy Garcia. To the ICT Committee, led by Project Leads Bom Paloma and Teddy Subolong, Chair Ray Lugtu, Vice Chair Mark Goriseta, and Liaison Director Sandy Garcia. To the Arts Committee, led by Chair Lia San Juan and Liaison Director Domingo, and to the Icons, past President Kit Manabat, past President Edwin Villanueva, and past President Billy Cortez, and former Secretary Sani Coloma, Live Subcommittee Chair Archie Bartolome, Overall Membership Committee Chair Caloy Cervantes, and Liaison Director Titi Salveta for the webinars that they have organized for the members last month. On future projects, Edwin has enumerated them before during the pre-opening session, and they're now again being flashed on the screen for your information. Please make time to attend them as there are valuable takeaways, witnesses, especially at this critical time. Our flagship project, the FINEX Week, will be held on October 4 to 8. And as Edwin has said, the theme is Disruptive Inclusion, Achieving Sustainable Future in the New Frontier. This year's conference will still be virtual, with a series of webinars to be held throughout the week. The FINEX committee, led by co-chairs Brian Edang and Albert Gamboa, and liaison director Mike Corin, continues to invite international speakers, experts, and world leaders to be keynote speakers and panelists. As of yesterday, there are 23 speakers and panelists that have confirmed their attendance. Among these are global and big local names. On the foreign side, we have speakers from the World Bank, the International Finance Corporation, the Asian Development Bank, Shell Dutch, Credit Suisse, Pincus Warburg, and on the local side, we have no less than the Governor of the Central Bank, JASA, and Pique Lopez to serve as speakers. Another project of the FINEX Week Committee is the setting up of the Vice Presidential Forum on October 23 and Presidential Forum on October 30. The Manila Times has graciously accepted to be the event's media partner with the Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry as co-host. On our membership drive, permit me to reiterate our appeal to everyone to support this year's membership recruitment drive. Due to the growing number of life members who will be exempted from the payment of annual dues, and the members who are resigning due to the pandemic's adverse economic impact, we need to recruit additional members this year to ensure the organization's financial sustainability. As I reported in the past and as mentioned by Edwin, your board of directors has approved an incentive program for all members. Your recruitment of new members and your active participation in our activities and projects will entitle you to a discount on the following year's membership fee. I'm also happy to report that the SEC has approved the amendment of our Articles of Incorporation, which among others adds a new class of members called associate membership. We will soon announce the criteria for acceptance into this new membership category. We hope that the associate members will be our organization's future. At this point, I would like to again reiterate our organization's sincerest gratitude to the following companies that have made commitments to support FINEX through their sponsorship for 2021. Union Bank of the Philippines as our partner, First Philippine Holdings Corporation and the LT Group of Companies, a platinum sponsor, Ayala Land, diamond sponsor, Converge ICT Solutions, Divina Law, Philippine Shell Petroleum Corporation, SGV and Company, and United Auctioneers Inc. as our gold sponsors, Bank of the Philippine Islands, BDO Unibank Inc., Sirtec Holdings, MegaWorld as our patron sponsors, and KPMG RJ Manabat and Company as our partner for the annual CFO survey. The first ever CFO survey is currently being conducted by the KPMG Group. We anticipate complete cooperation from our members who are chosen to respond. Please do support this CFO survey. On our FINEX anniversary book, I'm happy to announce that our 50th anniversary book, entitled FINEX 50 Leading on to Wider Frontiers, received its third international award from the International Association of Business Communications, or IABC Asia Pacific, with a Silver Quill Award of Excellence in the Publications category. For more than 40 years, IABC's Gold Quill Awards have recognized and awarded excellence in strategic communication worldwide. This third award completes our yearbook's grand slam for the year. I would like to express my profound thanks to the project team led by past President Santi Dumlao. Thank you very much, Sandy. Albert Gamboa and Dennis De Sena, with support from past Presidents Marivic Espano, Dick Dubaladad, Archit Bartolome and Ebot Tan, Director Flor Tariela, and past President Director Benny Soliben, and to Media Wise for co-publishing this book. Please buy copies of the book for posterity. And I would like to especially thank those who had bought more than one copy for themselves and their friends. In closing, we will continue to update you on our upcoming programs, particularly on the developments of our significant trust for this year. And we firmly hope to receive your continuing support. Thank you at mabuhay ang FINEX. Maraming salamat.
Okay, we come now to the introduction and induction of our new members. So I call on the debonair, my friend, Kaloy Cervantes, chair of the membership committee, to take the podium and introduce and conduct the induction of our new members. Kaloy?
Thank you, Edwin. Good afternoon, everyone. Don't I have a video? Sorry. We will now induct the following new members. I shall call the name, stating also the company position, the company, and sponsors. And may I request all new members to kindly open your cameras. First is Philemon Cecilio Caboncal, Chief Finance Officer of PJ Luillier Inc., sponsored by Mr. Ray Lugto. Next is Vivian Santamaria, Chief Finance Officer of Generica, sponsored by Kathy Ang. Next is Lawrence Paulo Tiquia, CFO and Treasurer of Toyota Santa Rosa Laguna, sponsored by Ray Lugto. To add solemnity to the occasion, may I call our President, Francisco Ed Lim, for their oath of membership. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I now request the inductees to raise the right hand and follow after me. I state your name.
I, Philemon Caboncal,
Vivian Santamaria,
Having been accepted as a member of the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines,
having been
having been
accepted as
accepted
a
a
member
member of
Financial
Financial
Executives
Executive Institute of the Philippines,
do hereby solemnly swear
do hereby
hereby solemnly
swear
that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my ability
that I will faithfully discharge to the best of my
my
ability
ability
my duties and responsibilities in the pursuit of its goals and objectives,
my duties and responsibilities in the pursuit of its goals and objectives,
that I will protect and uphold its constitution and bylaws,
that I
I
will
will
protect and
and
uphold
uphold
its constitution and bylaws,
that I will abide by its code of ethics,
that I
I
will
will
abide
abide by its code of
code of
ethics,
ethics,
that I will observe the highest professional, moral, and ethical standards,
that I will observe the highest professional, moral, and ethical standards,
and that I voluntarily impose this obligation upon myself
and that
I
voluntarily impose this obligation upon myself
without mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without mental reservation
or
or
purpose
purpose of evasion.
so help me God.
so help me God.
Help me God.
Thank you very much and welcome to FINEX. We look forward to your active involvement in our affairs. Thank you. Well,
Thank you.
can you
sir.
give
Thank you.
everybody, our new members, a round of applause?
Yeah. Okay. Welcome to FINEX new members. I hope you will give us your time to participate, join the committees, and participate in actively in all our activities. And thank you, Kaloy, for the hard work in recruiting all of these new members who will enrich FINEX professionally and financially. Kaloy, thank you again. Mike, at this stage, has our guest of honor arrived, or should we just play some of the audio videos of the past activities?
Yes, Sir Edwin, we have Honorable Mike Aguinaldo online already.
He is online. Okay. So I will have to have his backdrop. Could you have his backdrop, please? Thank you, Mike. Fellow FINEX members and our guests, today is a good day because we have a guest of honor and speaker who has, in fact, fired probably the first salvo in the propagation of truth. You know, before the dawn of time, a great battle was waged in heaven, where this great battle was led by an archangel named Michael. And it was a long fought battle, but with his flaming sword, he cast out all of the demons into the outer darkness. Today, he comes to us with two distinguished namesakes, the Archangel Michael and the warrior for independence, Aguinaldo. He is a person eminently qualified for this job as chairman of the Commission of Audit. He was appointed chairman of the Commission on Audit on the 24th of March, 2015, and is also concurrently the external auditor of the International Labor Organization of the United Nations. He has prepared thoroughly and has accomplished much to be in where he is right now. Because prior to his appointment to the commission, Chair Michael Aguinaldo was the Deputy Executive Secretary for Legal Affairs of the Office of the President. He also headed the Investigation and Adjudication Office, formerly the Presidential Anti-Graft Commission, and oversaw the implementation of integrity initiatives consistent with the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Chair Aguinaldo was a partner and member of the executive committee of a famous law firm, Romulo Mabanta, Buenaventura, Sayok, and De Los Angeles law firm. Having been with the law firm for 17 years, Chair Aguinaldo acquired extensive expertise in handling special projects, particularly in infrastructure, telecommunications, and energy. He is currently a faculty member of the Ateneo de Manila University School of Law, and now he is probably the first task. His probably biggest task right now is exorcising the demons that infest our government. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to present our guest of honor and speaker, Honorable Michael G. Aguinaldo.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Sir Edwin, for those flattering remarks. Of course, I should give credit where credit is really due, and that's to the auditors that we have, especially those in the field. No, they are the ones who really do a lot of the grunt work and bear a lot of the risks and exposures. I never would have imagined speaking before FINEX, but I could not resist, of course, the invitation, especially after FINEX spearheaded the support of the different business organizations for the Commission on Audit. So at the very least, I owe you that. Of course, Attorney Francis was my colleague at the Ateneo Law School faculty, and maybe not many of you know, even on the basketball court, but that was decades ago. Your Vice President, Uni Mata Perez, was my classmate in law school. She was, in fact, our salutatorian. And I do have a very good friend in your board, Mr. Domingo Go, who I've known for some time and who consistently invites me to the cultural affairs or activities of FINEX. I, however, consistently am unable to attend despite the invitations. But I've known Domingo also for quite a while. And so it's my pleasure to speak before you today. And I do have some slides prepared, and let me go through them. So next slide, please. Okay, this is basically the history of how the present Commission on Audit came to be. We started in 1899. This was really during the Spanish period when the Office of the Auditor of the Philippine Islands was created. The Office of the Auditor, of course, then was reporting to the King of Spain. The Americans took over and they established the Bureau of the Insular Auditor and eventually became the Bureau of Audits. In 1935, with the new, for our first constitution, really, the General Auditing Office was established, and we had as head of the office an Auditor General. In 1973, the Constitution converted the Commission to a three-man collegial body known as the Commission on Audit. In 1978, you had the Auditing Code, PD 1445, a large part of which was reproduced in the Administrative Code of 1987. It was also during this time that you had the massive reorganization and professionalization that took place. The chairperson at the time was Francisco Tantuico, the late Francisco Tantuico. And then, of course, in 1987, it's still the Commission on Audit, the supreme auditing institution of the government. Next slide, please. Okay, major functions of the Commission are provided in the Philippine Constitution. I've summarize them into these seven items you see on the screen. So I'll go through them one by one. Next slide, please. Okay, the very basic is the auditorial function. And this is the actual provision that you find. Examine, audit, and settle all accounts pertaining to 1, revenue, 2, expenditures, 3, uses of funds and property owned or held in trust or pertaining to. Okay, so revenue, expenditures, and uses of funds and property of all political subdivisions of the government, including provinces, cities, municipalities, barangays, agencies, instrumentalities, and government-owned or controlled corporations. So the scope is quite big. Okay, revenue, expenditures, and uses of funds and property. Now, apart from the government or the government instrumentalities mentioned, if you go to the next slide, we also cover auditing on post-audit basis the accounts of constitutional bodies that have been granted fiscal autonomy under the Constitution, such as COMELEC, the judiciary, etc. Autonomous state colleges and universities, other government-owned and controlled corporations and their subsidiaries. And okay, this one is probably quite relevant now. Such non-governmental entities. Okay, so even non-government entities. Some people stop there. No, you have to read it further. Some non-governmental entities receiving subsidy or equity directly or indirectly from or through the government. So such NGOs must be receiving subsidy or equity from or through the government. But you don't stop there. Meron pa yon. Which are required by law or the granting institution to submit to such audit as a condition of subsidy or equity. So it's not enough they receive. There should be, a law that says that they should submit to such audit. Okay, nonetheless, as long as government funds are involved, those government funds which are transferred to non-governmental entities or NGOs are subject to audit and in fact are being audited. So kung may fund transfer dun sa NGO, ino-audit po yan. And there are rules for the audit of that. Okay. Next slide. What are the types of COA audits? Now, being members of FINEX, I'm sure you're very familiar with your external auditors. And there is a bit of a difference, I guess, in terms of extent and sometimes in terms of scope. So first you have the financial audit. You know this very, very well because you go through this every year. And the purpose really is to determine whether financial statements are presented fairly and accurately as guided by international standards. So that's basic, that's done for all government institutions. Next, this is siguro where medyo lumalayo ng konti yung sa government because we do compliance audit, where we provide an opinion on whether government agencies are complying with laws, rules and regulations and disbursements and transactions and the like. We also assess the strength of internal control systems. Now, this is where the dreaded notice of disallowance that some of you have probably heard about or read about or maybe even experienced comes in. No? Compliance audit is basically, are you compliant with law? And if there is non-compliance with law, with procedures such as in procurement and the like, there will be an observation and there could be a disallowance that follows. Of course, the concept of disallowance, I don't think you find in the private sector when it comes to external audit. And then the next type of audit is performance audit. This is meant to help improve government programs and plans because what we do is we measure the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of actual programs and plans of government. This is where I foresee the Commission on Audit should be headed towards in the future. No? The U.S. Government Accountability Office, most of their work is already in the performance audit field. The financial audit aspect is a lot less, and partly because of technology, everything there is automated already. Here, we're still in the process of fulfilling a lot of automation requirements. What you see on the screen now are samples of performance audit reports that have come out in the last few years. And these have become very helpful, not only for the agencies concerned, but also for the Congress in their oversight functions. No? So for example, if you look at the last one about the 4Ps or Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, ito yung CCT, no? Yung conditional cash transfer. So we did a study on, on the program and its reach and whether there's any leakage in the process. Meron pong mga nakita, and so we had recommendations for cleaning up the list of beneficiaries before even expanding further the program. And that was used by the Senate, especially in their investigations. Next slide, please. A relatively new concept that was institutionalized in 2013 by my predecessor, former Chair Grace Pulido Tan, is the citizen participatory audit. This is actually a form of performance audit where we tap NGOs and ordinary citizens to assist in doing the audit. In the middle, you'll see something there that talks about implementation of farm-to-market road projects in Cavite province. So that refers to farm-to-market roads that were built. And now we ask the farmers themselves, who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of the roads, to come with their engineers to inspect the road. They actually walk the length of the road, measuring the length, measuring the width and the depth in certain areas. And they come out with a report where the farmers were able to provide input. The first one you see is audit report on barangay health stations. This is relevant because one of the conditions of the conditional cash transfer program is that the mothers patronize the barangay health center, which begs the question, is that barangay health center existing? And even more, is it worth patronizing? So together with the mothers in a particular barangay, they visit the health center and they complete a survey form of what they see and answers to questions that they propound. This is a very interesting program. It's been awarded internationally twice already. And we've actually introduced this program to several other countries such as Nepal, Bhutan, Nigeria, Kenya, and some others. And the nice thing about this is you now bring ownership of projects really to the people. They're able to monitor and participate and be able to provide evaluation as to whether the project was able to achieve its purpose, whether it was compliant with the specifications and the like. So that's a type of performance audit that we also push. The next slide. There are other types of COA audits. You have the fraud audit. If there's an indication of fraud, it's referred to that office. As you all know, when it comes to auditing, one of the main auditing techniques is sampling. What you do is you do sampling. You don't really examine each and every receipt and disbursement voucher and the like. But if there's some flag that causes you to think that there may be fraud or what, this is when a fraud audit comes in, or even a special audit comes in. A special audit is an audit done for a particular purpose. If you recall yung PDAF report noon, that actually was meant to assess the effectiveness of the implementation of projects by implementing agencies coming from, with funds coming from the Congress. So that was the purpose of that audit. You also have under special audit, rate audit. If you recall, I think maybe about 2 decades ago, there was a Supreme Court ruling granting a refund to all customers of Meralco. That was actually a result of a rate audit done by the Commission on Audit at that time. You have a levy audit and subsidy audit. Subsidy audit, like I mentioned, if there's any government funds that are transferred to a non-governmental organization, that would be subject of audit. Next slide. One of the functions that the Commission has is rulemaking, in that we can promulgate accounting and auditing rules and regulations. This is somewhat unique. I think there are only 3 or 4 countries in the world where their Supreme Audit Institution promulgates accounting and auditing rules at the same time. There could be somewhat of a conflict here because you're promulgating the accounting rules and auditing it at the same time, no? But that's the current system we have in place. When there were discussions on amending the Constitution, one of our proposals was to divorce this, no? Remove the accounting rules from the auditing rules as well. Yung ihiwalay na sila. So it shouldn't be under the Commission on Audit. A controversial area here is we can promulgate rules, including those for the disallowance of irregular, unnecessary, excessive, extravagant, or unconscionable expenditures or uses of government property. Controversial because these are very, very subjective terms. So to the extent possible, we try and define them, although these are difficult to define, but it's defined usually by examples rather than precise wording. So next slide, please. By the way, our rulemaking authority is exclusive. That's really an exclusive power of the Commission. The next slide is, reportorial. So we are required to submit to the President and Congress an annual report. This is the annual audit report, or AR, that you read about, no? On the financial condition and operation of government, subdivisions, agencies, instrumentalities, etc. Now, give you an idea, how many reports were submitted this year for audits done for fiscal year 2019. Okay, if you go to the next slide, yun, 19,743 reports. Again, 19,743 reports. I have about 6,000 auditors. I have about 9,000 people, maybe about 6,000, a little less, can be classified as auditors, either CPA, lawyer, or engineer po yan. They're able to come up with that many reports, 19,743. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg, because if you look at consolidated annual audit reports, or CAARs, anong ibig sabihin yan? Well, 16 departments in government, all of them have regional offices and other smaller offices. All those regional offices have a separate report, and they are now consolidated with the central office to come up with a consolidated annual report. And then you have annual audit reports that includes local governments as well, management letters, and consolidated MLs. The bulk, of course, are barangay annual audit reports, no? 13,224. These are relatively simple, but look at it, it's 13,224. Medyo madami-dami yon. In addition, we do have performance audit, special audit, and fraud audit reports, no, on the side as well. And there are other reports that we come out with, and I'll get into that later. Now, next slide will show you our audit clients. There are 64,000. Mind you, of course, the bulk of that are barangays, no? And so you might wonder, bakit 19,000 lang nilalabas? Well, because the barangays are audited on a cyclical basis, depending on their era or their revenues. No, there are some barangays. Think maybe Barangay San Lorenzo or Barangay San Antonio in Ortigas, na medyo malaki ang revenues. So even bigger than some municipalities. So they're audited on an annual basis. But there are some barangays, you can think in some islands and in some mountain areas na, the revenue might be, only several 100,000. So pag ganyan, they're audited maybe every 2 or 3 years. So cyclical po yan. And these are just some of those that are audited, that you see on the screen. Okay, next slide, please. Now, what is the annual audit report? So it contains the results of the financial audit, and an audit opinion, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, is rendered. It's not really a rating. So sa dyaryo kasi minsan some agencies or LGUs will say that we got the highest rating from COA. The highest rating, of course, being an unqualified or unmodified or a clean opinion in either case. Which of course is good, and we encourage that because it shows that they are complying with accounting standards and so on. But it doesn't mean there's nothing that could be disallowed, or that there's no observation that might ripen into a disallowance. All it means is that you have complied with international standards in your reporting. Okay, which is a good thing. And we encourage that, and we acknowledge that, especially when a GOCC gets 8 years consistently unmodified or unqualified opinion, then it's obviously a very good thing. No? So it contains the results of the financial and compliance audit. So what you have there are audit observations and recommendations, and it also includes management's comments, the auditor's rejoinder to those comments, and annexes to support the observations. Okay, now I'll discuss later when I talk about myths and misconceptions, the question of whether preliminary lang ba itong report na to. The short answer right now is hindi yan preliminary po. That is the report, and that's usually the final report, because these are reports done on an annual basis. So it's a final report for that year. Next slide, please. Something definitely private auditors or private auditing firms don't have is quasi-judicial power. This refers to audit actions taken by auditors with respect to disbursements or transactions of an agency. So a transaction may be allowed in audit, which could mean wala namang sasabihin because it was allowed in audit, walang nakitang issue. Or the audit may result in an observation, a notice of suspension, a notice of disallowance, or a notice of charge. I'll discuss each one briefly in the next slides. Now, if it's a notice of disallowance or notice of charge, this can be appealed to the commission proper and eventually to the Supreme Court. So may process po yan. Next slide, please. Okay, first is the audit observation memorandum. This is in the course of the audit, may mga nakita silang deficiencies or irregularities, walang documentation, hindi nag-provide ng proper info or access to documents and the like. They might issue an observation, and this is merely what it says, an observation. So the task of management here is to reply, to provide whatever deficiencies there or correct any misimpressions created during the audit. So it's a process. So if they get this memorandum, pwede namang sumagot, and then they can engage, and then it can eventually be resolved. Next slide. Now, if at first may makita sila doubtful legality, for example, hindi nagkaroon ng bidding, or they see, hindi nagsasubmit ng documents. Madalas yan, minsan hindi nagsasubmit ng documents for whatever reason. No? Pwedeng mag-issue ng notice of suspension yung auditor, which is basically saying, okay, suspend any disbursement for that. Now, this notice though has no teeth. There's really no penalty if they continue with the disbursement, and sometimes rightfully so, because baka sa tingin talaga ng agency wala silang mali doon and they continue with the project. Okay lang naman yon. The thing is, there are compliance requirements, and if these are not complied with within 90 days, it can mature into a disallowance already. So that leads us to the next slide. Oh, hindi pa pala. Notice of charge. Okay, notice of charge, this you don't see too often, but this refers to uncollected revenue or receipts, either under assessed, under appraised, or under collected. So it could be any of the three. Meron po yan. It's not limited to the usual tax revenue collecting agencies. No, these are those that collect permit fees, and the like. No, pag BIR kasi, normally may process yan, and we haven't really gotten into revenue audit of BIR as yet for two reasons. One is I don't think we're that ready yet. We still need to build up capability. And second is we have to get approval from the Office of the President. Although Secretary Dominguez had told me way back na, basta once we're ready, siya na daw bahala. He'll get that approval. But that's something that hopefully will get work or will push through in the future. The next slide is notice of disallowance. Yon. Okay, these are issued for transactions that are illegal, irregular, unnecessary, excessive, extravagant, or unconscionable. Now, in case of a notice of disallowance, this is the potential effect. The erring government official may be liable to refund the amount disbursed. So again, the erring government official may be liable to refund the amount disbursed. So, medyo mabigat yan. Kaya medyo yung mga government officials, medyo takot dyan pag may disallowance because it could mean liability on their part. Okay, and that is taken straight from the law itself, no? PD 1445 and the revised Administrative Code of 1987. Those are actual rules. There are some nuances because of some Supreme Court decisions, but that's the general rule, basically. Now, give you an idea of audit actions taken. If we go to the next slide. Okay, this is for 2020. And here are just some figures. No? There were 1,524 notices of disallowance amounting to 383,382,000. That is relatively low. And that's because I think a lot of the expenditures from January to December were moved towards the COVID response and including yung mga social amelioration. No? The numbers are normally higher in what we might call normal years. No? Notice of suspension, you have a lot, umabot mga almost 20 billion. But to be fair, hindi naman lahat yon nag-ripen into a disallowance. Okay, some of them might still be pending. And notice of charge, there were only 34, but there was an under-collection of about 16 million. Now, for the first half of this year, already notices of disallowance, about 248 million worth. Notice of suspension, about 3.5 billion, but like I said, that you could consider as preliminary, I think. And notice of charge, lima pa lang at 253,000. But a lot of the figures for 2021, lalabas pa yan by next year. Okay. Now, there are other quasi-judicial actions. If we go to the next slide. Money claims against government. You have a contract with government, di kayo binayaran. What they'll say is, mag-file na lang kayo sa COA. So a money claim is filed against the government with the commission. If we rule in your favor, in the claimant's favor, the government agency will have to pay. If they don't have the budget for it, then the budget will be programmed for the next budget cycle. Relief from accountability, you're in charge of government property, you were held up, nawala, yun, this is where that comes in. Request for concurrence in the engagement of private counsel. There are limitations on the engagement of private counsel, primarily because you have the OSG and OGCC already, no? But there are instances where it may be required or may be needed, and there's a need for concurrence of the OSG, OGCC, and the Commission on Audit. Ostensibly, yung sa amin has to do with reasonableness of the fees, more than the necessity. And then lastly, write-off of unliquidated cash advances and dormant accounts receivables. One of the problems really in government is nagpapalit ng tao every so often. And so sometimes some of these receivables hindi na naasikaso and they end up aging. And what you have is, receivables from Marcos time, that far back. And so the responsibility to request for write-off is with the agency, their finance or accounting department. And so these are done through the Commission on Audit as well. We have devolved a lot of power already in terms of write-off to the resident auditors and their directors. No, para hindi naman lahat iakyat sa commission proper. Next slide. We also have a power to recommend measures to improve efficiency and effectiveness of government operations. This is where performance audit comes in. And it's really pleasant to note that more and more our reports on efficiency and effectiveness are being sought and utilized by Congress. That is the way it really should be. And hopefully we're able to build up our performance audit capabilities even more. This is a project that we started about 5 years ago. We've been supported by the US GAO, our counterparts in the US. And every year, several times a year, they provide training for our people, and they help supervise some of the practices done when they do the audit. Next, we have limited accounting, keeping the general accounts of the government. Secretary Dominguez asked me when he first was going to be, when it was announced he was going to be the Secretary of Finance, whether we have a financial report for the entire government. And I told him we actually have 3. One for the national government, one for the GOCCs, and one for the local government. We're still working on a way to actually consolidate all 3. The problem is there are specific nuances for each sector, whether it's national government or the local government or the GOCCs. But that's something we're still working on. Next slide, custodial archival. This is a big problem, especially for government offices, because we're required to keep and preserve voucher supporting documents pertaining thereto for a period of 10 years minimum. It's only after 10 years, and we have to seek permission from the National Archives before we can dispose of those documents. Obviously, if there's a controversy involving any of those documents, they'll be kept for a longer period. But to give you an example, I think in Quezon City, 4 na container van na po yan. So it does create a problem, not only in terms of space, but also health of the people who have to sort through those documents. That's why one of the things we're trying to do, and we've started doing, is digitizing documents moving forward. The problem is it requires a lot of money and a lot of manpower. So we're piloting it in several areas, but I think that's the only way moving forward to and it would support use of technology moving forward, where you rely more on electronic documents. In fact, we have an issue once, a circular on the use of electronic documents, digital signatures, and the like. That's for signature already. I'm just waiting for the other commissioner to arrive from Davao, and then we'll be able to sign that and release that already. Okay, so exactly what is the main role of the Commission on Audit? Our main role is to determine if management has carried out its fiscal responsibility properly and effectively. And what is that fiscal responsibility? If you go to the next slide, it means that the head of the agency must ensure that the resources of government are managed, expended, or utilized in accordance with laws, rules, and regulations, and safeguarded against loss or wastage through illegal or improper disposition, with a view to ensuring efficiency, economy, and effectiveness in the operations of government. It's not easy. That's quite a lot. Managing, expending, and utilizing resources in accordance with rules, safeguarding against loss or wastage, and with a view to ensuring economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Madami yan. It's really quite a bit. And it's quite difficult, especially if you're a department, because you have regional offices, you may even have provincial offices. So even their handling of property, funds and property, it's so hard to monitor that from, say, the central office. It's very, very challenging, very difficult. And that's one reason why a lot of agencies, yung opinion nila qualified. Usually it had something to do with inventory, yung property, plant, and equipment. The head of agency is immediately and primarily responsible for all government funds and property pertaining to his agency. Okay, general. So now, before I close, if I may move to what I call myths and misconceptions about the Commission on Audit. So the first myth or misconception is that COA probes corruption. That's not actually part of the mandate. Although the results of our audit, and in the course of our audit, we may find things that might indicate corruption. This might lead to a fraud audit, a special audit, or a direct referral to the ombudsman. If we do a fraud audit or special audit and we find that mukhang, there was a crime committed here, that's forwarded to the Ombudsman. And we also have joint efforts with the Ombudsman in certain cases. No, nagpo-probe kami pareho. We both are involved. You know, we also have memoranda or agreements with different government agencies like AMLAC, SEC, PCC, PACC. All these agencies we have, you know, for sharing of information and the like. So we don't actually probe corruption. So we cannot say that there was no corruption. All we can say is there's nothing in the findings to indicate that there was any loss due to corruption. Yeah, like the statement we came out with the DOH, no? Kasi wala namang sinabing ganon at all that any funds were lost due to corruption. I think one of the things that people don't realize is that the Commission on Audit is primarily fact-finding. We look at the facts, and then these are the facts as presented. Some of the conclusions we are not the proper entity to make. It maybe it's the Ombudsman or the DOJ that may have to do that. But those that are within our authority, of course, we do, like rendering an opinion, issuing disallowances, and the like. Okay. Minsan kasi may nagsusulat sa amin, pinapa-investigate yung isang barangay captain kasi may mansion daw and all. So we have to refer them to the Ombudsman. Hindi namin sakop po yan. The second misconception is that annual audit reports are preliminary reports. Okay? Hindi po ganon. An annual audit report is the report for that fiscal year of this agency. And these are required by law to be submitted by June 30 of the succeeding year. So may deadline yan. Siguro the way to liken it is think of, go back to grade school. Nag-exam kayo, di ba? Ang sinasabi ng teacher finished or not finished, pass your papers. And you're graded accordingly. So ganun po yung nangyayari dyan. The annual audit report is a report as of a certain cutoff date based on what had been submitted. So that is the final report for that year. Now, distinguish an annual audit report from an audit finding. So kunwari may audit finding about a certain thing or certain they may not necessarily be final because baka hindi lang na-submit. So pwede pang i-submit. Okay, but that doesn't mean that the annual audit report is preliminary. Hindi. Final na po yan. Okay, so we go to the third myth in that all observations in an annual audit report can be corrected or rectified. Hindi. There are some that can be, and you can see that from the recommendations made. Sometimes yung kulang lang documentation, may hindi na furnish or so they can comply with that. Walang problema. Yung pag-transfer ng DOH ng 42 billion sa PSDBM na walang memorandum of agreement, that can be corrected, or they can even argue against it and argue na sabi kasi ng PSDBM hindi daw required. And so that, they can make an issue out of it. Okay lang yun, walang problema po yun. But there are some that hindi na mako-correct because yun na yun, wala nang ibang hinihingi. They may have violated the law or a procurement rule or something. Hindi mo na mako-correct yan. Kasi violation meron ng violation. Okay? So some can be corrected or rectified, some hindi. And one thing I try to remind our auditors, of course, substance over form. Kung yung substance naman nandiyan one thing you always have to look at is, was there any damage to government? Okay, was there any damage? Kung wala namang nakitang damage, then it depends on how grave a violation was committed. No? Is it something that requires further probing by the Ombudsman or the like? Lastly, annual audit reports are cleared by or passed through the chairperson, the commissioners. No, that's a myth, misconception. It's physically impossible na dumaan lahat yon. There are just too many, and even some of the more, you might say, the bigger agencies, mahirap rin po. There is a bit of a potential conflict, no? Because if a notice of disallowance is issued to any of these agencies, eventually ang appeal niyan will be resolved by the commission proper, which consists of the chairperson and the commissioners. So if we intervene early on, conflict of interest kami when it comes to pag inappeal na yan at inakit na sa amin. So these are not cleared or passed through the chairperson and the commissioner. Sometimes lang, they might flag certain things and tell us, sir, may ganitong finding or may ganyang finding. And what we do is we look at it, we study it. If we have any questions, we might ask it. But these reports are cleared through a certain process. Meron yang assistant commissioner level, meron yang director level. So hindi lahat po dumadaan. And in fact, none of them are required to be pre-cleared by the chair or any of the commissioners. So maybe I'll leave it at that. I think I've spoken quite a bit. Pasensya na, namimiss ko na rin mag-lecture sa classroom. So kayo ang naging proxy. But maraming salamat po. Thank you.
Mr. Edwin, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Mike, for that informative presentation that you made. It was very good and it was straight to the point. But before I go to my task of introducing the panelists and the moderator for the Q&A, I would like you to know that I came across through the Facebook and Viber groups of a picture that I felt was both touching and apropos to what is happening nowadays. And in that picture was contained a person of a lady hunched over her desk and working hard over some papers. And the caption was entitled, "Not all superheroes wear capes. Some of them work for the Commission on Audit." And with that said, I can assure you, Chairman Mike, you are not alone. Today's panelists are a distinguished group. There are two, and they are composed of Mr. Eddie Yap and a venerable idol and icon of mine, Cora de la Paz Bernardo. Let me start first with the panelist Eddie Yap, who is sharing his presence all the way from Vancouver and experiencing the first chills of fall. Eddie is a CPA and the CEO of the Claremont Group. But this is not, I feel, where his greatest achievement lies. He is a civic-spirited citizen who actually was the advocate for the EDSA Green busway, which actually helped reduce traffic by assigning lanes so that the buses will no longer be weaving in and out, and they have their own boarding and disgorging parts. And that was through his advocacy. He's the chair of the Green EDSA movement. He's a writer. He writes for the Inquirer and the Star and discusses fiscal, taxation, the economy, and other important matters, and is a part of the FINEX National Budget Study Group. Thank you, Eddie, for lending your time to be a panelist. And our second panel reactor is Cora de la Paz Bernardo. Cora is an idol of mine, a very distinguished and accomplished lady. She is an independent director now at DNL Industries, Rojas and Company, and Republic Glass Holdings. She currently sits as an advisor to the board and to the audit committee of BDO Unibank and advisor to the audit committee of PLDT. In 1985, a very historic and eventful period, she became the first woman president of FINEX after serving as president after Ambassador Jose Cuisia Jr. And she later served as the chair of the organizing committee of the World Congress of EFA in 1988 during the presidency of past President Rene Valencia. And now I introduce you to our moderator for today, Attorney Uni Marie Mata Perez. She's a leading Philippine tax and corporate lawyer and also a certified public accountant. She specializes in tax and corporate matters and has extensive experience in mergers and acquisitions, infrastructure projects, foreign investments, and all aspects of Philippine tax practice. She is currently the EVP and Corporate Secretary of FINEX. And she has been the past president of the Tax Management Association of the Philippines and the current president of the Asia Oceania Tax Consultants Association, a regional association of tax consultant organizations from 17 Asia Oceanic states encompassing about 400,000 tax auditors. Oh, she graduated as salutatorian of her class from the Ateneo Law School and earned the degree of Juris Doctor. She graduated summa cum laude in her undergraduate course of BS Commerce, major in accounting from the University of San Carlos. And she finished her strategic business economics program from the University of Asia and the Pacific. She is the counsel of several local and multinational clients and has been ranked as one of the top 100 lawyers of the Philippines by Asia Business Law Journal. Attorney Uni, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Edwin. But first of all, I'd like to thank Mike for accommodating us this membership meeting. We are so pleased, Mike. I know we are one of the first few private organizations that you agreed to talk before. It's a privilege to have you. Well, aside from being classmates in law school, Mike and I hail from the same provincial roots, Zamboanga del Norte, so he couldn't say no to us. Anyway, to our participants, you may send your questions. You already have a few questions here through the Q&A tab, which can be found at the bottom part of your screen. We will try to accommodate them and read them later. But for the panel discussion, before we start our formal Q&A part, I would like to request our panelists, Cora and of course Eddie, hello, to deliver some reaction, 5 minutes, no longer than 5 minutes, please. So we have more time for Q&A. Don't worry, we have enough time. And then after that, we will go to the formal Q&A. And may I start with the lady first? Of course, the esteemed Miss Cora de la Paz Bernardo.
Thank you very much, Uni. Good afternoon to everyone. I must admit that I had a good feeling when I read the news about the appointment of Chairman Michael Aguinaldo to the position of COA Chair. I don't know him personally and have never met him personally, but coming from the law firm that I also had as my law firm, headed by, again, if you use the word venerable, Dick Romulo, you know that he's well-trained and his heart is in the right place. I remember my first husband, who was a lawyer, who when I asked him about a treatment that was being proposed for a certain tax program, he said, "Nobody will believe that I don't know the law, so I will not do what you're describing." That much I respect him after what he said, because he's a very capable lawyer, but hearing him talk that way made me feel very proud. As was mentioned earlier, I've been in the practice of as a CPA in the field of auditing, having served for 36 years with Pricewaterhouse, 20 years of which was as its chair in the Philippines. And I know that truth is always the key word of every CPA. After the period that I served with Pricewaterhouse, I was appointed to the Social Security system as its president CEO, and I served there for 7 years. And as a result, we were subjected to the audit of the Commission on Audit. Knowing all of that, one must realize that I'm a strong supporter of the Commission on Audit. I believe in auditing and coming up with comments on how organizations should be run. And I accept and realize that comments made by the auditors are not given lightly. They are usually studied well and proper balance is taken. So I don't quarrel with the auditors when I became president of the SSS. In fact, I welcomed them because they come up with certain suggestions on how we can further improve our operations in the organization. I had to assign one of my former partners at Pricewaterhouse to take care of dealing with the COA auditors, because I really want to hear from them what we can still do to improve the operations of the Social Security system. I did not quarrel with any one of them because I look up to them as friends and consultants who can help us improve our operations. So that's the most that I can say at this time. The management letters that we get from our auditors are very much welcome because it guides us the way we should run the organization. And of course, having been a practicing auditor for half the lifetime of many of you, double the lifetime of many of you, I have nothing but support for the Commission on Audit. Okay.
Thank you so much, Cora. I think we share your sentiment, and we're also very proud of Mike. And Eddie, and who's from Vancouver, thank you so much. What time is it there? Can we hear from Eddie yet?
It's muted.
You have to unmute yourself, Eddie.
Yep. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. I was saying that you look so chic.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be with you, and from way far away, it's nice to be with so many of our dear colleagues, especially Cora. Cora is a Suki of mine in my concert productions. She never misses a concert together with Ike. I still remember Ike, Cora. Now, okay, going to the assignment that I was given, I think that being currently located far away from the fire, passion, and emotions over there, revolving recent controversial matters involving the COA. I will try to approach this assignment with the discipline of a certified public accountant with training in commercial law and auditing. Cora and I belong to the same alma mater. The presentation of the Honorable Chairman of the Commission on Audit, Michael Aguinaldo, was on the constitutional mandate and responsibility of the COA to audit the books and accounts and expenditure of funds and properties of the government and its instrumentalities, as well as its functions and various types of audits and reports. The presentation was very informative and uplifting, particularly on the participatory auditing, which was pursuant to the new constitution, a first in our country, wherein such programs as farm to market are being participated in by private citizens. From the presentation, it can be seen that the COA is well structured and staffed to meet its challenges and responsibilities, particularly for such a very important function, given the fact that the government spends trillions of pesos in public funds and is the custodian of assets also worth trillions of pesos. Now, in relation to the audit function of the COA, which is related to and the offshoot of the General Appropriations Act, wherein expenditures is authorized by law by Congress. I would like to say that FINEX is familiar with such matters, being one of the very few organizations in the country that took upon itself to study the national budget. Since 2009, FINEX has published close to 10 publications on the national budget. I, for one, contributed 2 articles for the publication. The first one for the maiden issue, Understanding the National Budget. And the second article was the revenue side of the national budget. So when Chairman Aguinaldo mentioned the transfer of 42 billion pesos from the Department of Health to the procurement service of the DBM, it struck a familiar chord, because among the studies that we undertook was regarding transfer of funds from one department to another, or from one branch to another. And I was hoping that the chairman would express an opinion whether the transfer that was made was in accordance with law, was in accordance with the budget law or not. The recent controversy over the purchases of medical supplies, I would say, well, it's common knowledge that this controversy originated from the COA report, and that being a CPA with training in auditing, it was my expectation that the answers to questions vexing the nation would be in the audit report, rather than the Senate seemingly doing the job of COA by filling the blanks on the transaction. Now, I believe that COA, being an independent body, would be in a good position to objectively present the facts and information on this matter for the information of FINEX members and the public as well. So perhaps based on the questions that I'm seeing now being posted by the members, perhaps the good chairman would be willing to address some of the questions related to the functions of his office and the conduct of audit and the preparation of its reports, particularly related to these controversial transactions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eddie and Cora. Those were very wonderful insights. Mike, so there are a few questions, but can I just fire the first question?
Yes.
We are in a state of emergency.
Yes.
And we know that under the Procurement Act, when we are in a state of an emergency, public bidding can be dispensed with. Negotiation
Yes.
is allowed. So now, how does this now affect your audit process, especially that there's no public bidding and there is this controversy? It should not just be this big sum. It can go to every national or agency in a local government on overpricing because there's public bidding. So there is relaxation now of some of the rules. How does this impact your approach now, or the audit of COA on these entities nationwide?
Okay. Yeah, let me distinguish first, no? Because when Bayanihan 1 was passed, it actually authorized the president to do procurement without regard to 9184. It said to procure expeditiously, exempt from 9184 and related laws. The only requirement was advantageous to government, no? But I guess you expect that you're in a pandemic, and at that time, you know, na pinasa yun, we really didn't know what we were up against. And so, you know, they said whatever the president needs to act, pwede niyang gawin. But to be fair, no? To be fair, naglabas ng resolution ang GPPB. You know, GPPB, or the Government Procurement Policy Board, is composed of cabinet secretaries, no? Deciding to apply the rules on emergency procurement, notwithstanding the fact that they could have ignored 9184 altogether. So I take this to mean that they really wanted a process in place na hindi bara-bara, but you know, at least may konting process, a semblance of a process that could be followed. So you find that in that circular. Now, of course, nag-expire na ating Bayanihan 1, but nonetheless, as you mentioned, we're still in a state of emergency, which means the procurement rules under 9184 now apply. So, you know, there is a process, and so we audit compliance with that process. Albeit, it's not like a normal situation where you have bidding, and so you have a strict procedure and you just follow it. Ito, titingnan mo ngayon yung compliance niya with the requirements for emergency procurement. So now audit pa rin naman po.
But how about overpricing? How is that determined?
Overpricing is very tricky. In fact, we came out with guidelines on the audit of COVID-19 related expenditures last year, no? And yeah, I guess as you know, auditors here know, normally when you say guidelines on audit, it's basically a checklist. No, ano yung titingnan mo. So it's a very somewhat objective type of thing. In a sense, walang puso yun. Listahan lang eh. So that's why I had to come out with a covering note to all auditors to remind them that first of all, we're still in a pandemic. So some of the rules that we apply in normal situations may not necessarily be applicable. So for example, if you go back to March 2020, mahirap mag-market scan nung panahon na yon. ECQ eh. So sarado yung mga ano. So if you're going to find a price for a particular thing, it would be difficult to do a market scan. So I said, well, you could be lenient on that respect. But at the same time, you also use common sense. So to give you a specific example, yung surgical mask, no, yung DTI price of a surgical mask in March 2020 was 28 pesos. Okay. Now, may mga nagbebenta no ng 50, 60, even 100. And in fact, ni-raid yan ng mga NBI because they said, oy, overpricing yan. And I think there was a price control that was set by DOH based on the 28 pesos. But, you know, I told the auditors, tingnan nyo because people were panicking. Obviously, probably supply was less than demand. It was made mandatory. So, you know, people have to get and people were afraid. So, you know, if they got it for 40 pesos, 50 pesos, okay. At that time, maybe, pwede. Now, obviously, if they got it for 200 pesos, ang unang tanong ba't di nyo sinumbong sa NBI yan? Medyo masyadong halata naman yun, 200 pesos. Even if there's no kalokohan, if they're being gouged, nonetheless, dapat sinumbong nyo yan. Now, fast forward, 5 months later, what would that be? August, September. You know, prices were already below the 28 peso range. In fact, DOH came out with a price range there. I think September, parang 5 pesos na lang yung surgical mask. So, sabi ko, then you look at procurement at that time. Iba rin yun. So, I told them, look at several things. Number one, remember we're in a pandemic. And then look at the particular situation at that particular point in time, what was the price range available in your area, your own experience. Magkano mo binili yung face shield na yan? You know, you bought the face shield in May for 175 pesos. In September, 10 piso na lang yun. But can you blame them for buying it at 175 in May if that was actually the price dictated by the market? No, wala ka rin magagawa at that time. So I just told them, be conscious of that. Use common sense and the test of reasonableness. So that's why overprice is quite difficult back in March 2020. Today, medyo madali because we know there's a glut, there's so much supply, and you know the indicative prices have already gone down considerably. So ngayon, medyo madaling tingnan because you know, if you're procuring for months ahead nowadays, hindi na talaga yan emergency eh. Because ano eh, you can plan already. Dapat na-procure mo na nga yun previously eh. So those are the things that we ask them to look at. No? It's difficult to dictate how an auditor is going to work. Alam nyo naman, especially those who are who've been in auditing, that there's a great degree of independence given to the auditor. Ganon rin po sa amin, medyo devolved sa kanila. Hindi kami nakikialam with the work that they do. We might throw some questions at them, but then we will not dictate how they should act. And so, kahit yung mga procurement po na ganon, we're able to look at it, even issues of overpricing. Yun lang, when you go back to March 2020, it was really, I mean, we have to acknowledge it was really a difficult situation. We didn't know what we were dealing against. Some of us thought, isang buwan lang yan, okay na. We didn't realize na aabot ng ganito back then. No, so we have to act accordingly also.
Thank you, Mike.
Can I just say something?
Yes, Cora.
I had the same experience. There's a friend who was very upset about all these things that he's reading about and wanted some of us to file a case together with him. And I called him up and I said, you know, I had the same experience about March, early April. I bought two packs of face mask, whatever price. I would pay for it because I didn't even know where I'm going to get them. But a few months later, I found out that our house helps and drivers were able to buy at a much lower price. And I was shocked. And I said, ganyan bang kamura? Ba't ang mahal ng bayad ko? And then it was at the time that I realized there was a case of law of supply and demand. There was no supply at the time, and I'm willing to pay whatever it takes for us to be protected. But months later, you realize prices have gone down. And it's difficult to use the prices in March to dictate the price about August.
So it really shows that the auditor has to be creative and resourceful as well. Mike, there are a few questions.
Uni, may I say something? Uni?
Yes, Ed, go ahead.
Yeah. Chairman Aguinaldo, the businessman among us here understands very much what you said and what Cora said, no? That price is dictated by supply and demand at the time of the transaction, not 5 months later or 5 months before, no? I distinctly remember the situation after the 1985 devaluation of the peso. After that, traders jack up their prices because the peso devalued substantially. But because of the high prices, demand went down. And because there was no demand, prices went back to the previous and even lower than that because importers and traders had to unload their merchandise. So goes to show that the market is very dynamic. But then, Mr. Chairman, you know, we can understand what you said, no? But your auditors, I understand that, you know, it's difficult to dictate on them. But you mentioned that there are audit guidelines that you issued, no? It seems that this was not followed. Ganun ba?
Hindi naman po. I think for the most part, sinusunod naman nila. In specifically itong mass, yung sa Pharmaly, there was no finding in the audit report of overpricing. Wala naman silang nahanap doon because like I said, the suggested DTI price at that time was 28 na naging price cap by I think through DOH, no? And what they procured kasi yung prices ranged from 1350, which is I think locally manufactured, to 27. So it was within, you know, in fact lower than the suggested price, no? Kaya wala silang finding na ganon. What their finding was inventory management. Because, you know, certain volumes were procured in April and early May. And by September, when prices had dropped down drastically, hindi pa ubos yung inventories nila. So they had a lot of stock, but at the price, which were required at a much, you know, at the price in March, na pagdating ng September, mura na lang yon. So, and this is primarily PSDBM, no? Because they bought some of these supplies, what they call common use supplies, for purchased by government agencies. Now, some of these, ang nangyayari dyan, may float ang government agency with PSDBM, and whenever they get a common use supply, humingi sila, let's say, 10,000 masks, aawasin dun sa float ng agency. But at this point in time, ayaw na kumuha ng agency sa kanila because they could buy it in, you know, across the street for 10 pesos. But yung charge sa kanila, including yung 4% patong ng yung admin fee, no? Parang patong yan, yung admin fee. They're being charged 20, 25, you know, thereabout. So ayaw na kumuha sa kanila, which you could understand. Obviously, you know, being a government agency, you also want to be fiscally responsible with respect to your funds, even though you're required to get from PSDBM. For the most part po, nasunod naman ata yung mga guidelines because we haven't heard a lot of complaints about some of the audit findings from the different agencies. Like I mentioned, yung na-audit namin siguro sa isang taon, maybe 15 to 20,000, no? So ilan lang naman yung may reklamo po talaga.
Mike, does the COA have jurisdiction to audit Pharmaly or the agency dealing with it? Is it auditing it? And also Red Cross, because I think these are in the
Basta government funds are disbursed, those funds have to be audited. Even if it goes to Red Cross or to Pharmaly, ino-audit po talaga yon. So they are and continue to be audited. Yung funds, no? But if you're asking, will we come out with an annual audit report to Pharmaly? Wala namang ganon. That's a private company. We don't have access to ano. But insofar as they receive payments from government, yung payments na yun are subject to audit and actually are being audited.
There's a question here. How do you conduct now audits during these lockdown periods? Are your auditors able to do virtual audits considering the overwhelming manual processes of audits?
We've given the auditors a lot of flexibility because for one, you're also subject to the rules of the agency premises, no? So it depende rin kung pumapasok ba yung mga tao dun sa agency and so on. For the most part, exit conferences have been done virtually. There was a time, I guess, nung GCQ tayo, minsan nagagawa nilang face-to-face, with masks and all that, with distancing and the like. But I think there's a lot of them are doing it virtually. Obviously, in some provinces na wala naman masyadong incidents of COVID cases, some municipalities, yun siguro nagagawa nila. But for the most part here, we've had to do a lot of virtual work. That also means that sometimes some activities get postponed. So sometimes yung inventory ng property, plant, equipment in some areas, medyo na-delay yan. Sometimes the cash count, medyo na-delay yan. Yung cash examination, medyo na-delay. So we have to adapt. And this era of Zoom and WebEx and Microsoft Teams and the like, we've updated our connectivity. We've subscribed to all these services. We really have to adapt. And I guess one of the nice things is this forces you to adapt. The experience in government, and I'm sure a lot among you will agree, it's so difficult to change. To introduce technology for whatever reason. There's always some kind of resistance. I mean, it took us until 2010 to automate elections, when it could have been done, 10, 15 years earlier. The technology was readily available. I think those of you who are members of the Philippine Stock Exchange, you've been doing computerized voting for the longest time, even ahead of the COMELEC. So nandun naman yung technology, but there's always been some resistance to that. So this forced us to break barriers. You know, we really have to move into that era of automation and so on. So, which is a good thing, a really good thing, I think, and should sana matuloy-tuloy yan moving forward.
Yes, on this performance audit, there's a question here. Is COA going to do a performance audit, or is it doing a performance audit on PhilHealth?
Well, we did on the all case rate system, and actually lumabas na yun. It's probably on our website already if you want to take a look. Yung all case rate, ito yung may rate for particular treatments, no? So for example, natural childbirth, yung bayad is 7,500 ata. For I think cataract, it's 15,000. Yung mga ganon, no? Dialysis, certain amounts, which we said was good because it sped up claims. But the problem is, because so many treatments were subject to that case rate, dapat kasi yan nire-review periodically. For example, yung 7,500 for natural childbirth, ang lumalabas cost talaga nun was between 1.5 to 2.5. So government was paying 5,000 pesos more for, you know, a procedure that cost less. Meanwhile, there were some procedures that cost more than what government was willing to pay for. Di sana doon na lang nalipat yung difference. So yun yung nakita ko. There were over 20,000 treatments that are subject to that case rate. How is someone going to review that? It's just not doable, and in fact, hindi tuloy nagagawa. So that was one, no? But there are other audits being done on PhilHealth, on upcasing. That's another issue. And we're also doing a performance audit now on the resilience of the Philippine health system. That's one of the kasama po yan dun sa Sustainable Development Goals ng UN. I think it's goal 16 or 16 ata or 17, no? Now we are auditing together with other Asian countries. It's like a joint project, yung resilience of health systems. And I think there's a lot na magiging findings po dyan.
Thank you so much. There's a question here. I'm reading down some questions. What triggers a fraud audit? And the other question is, are intelligence funds subject to audit?
Okay, yung fraud audit is triggered by any badge or indicator of fraud. Because as you know, you do sampling. For example, you have certain disbursements. So you look at certain, select randomly some of the vouchers and some of the transactions, and you look. Kung wala ka naman nakikitang then wala kang issue doon. But if you come across something and it turns out in your verification na, oy, fake pala, like fake receipts, yon, maraming ganon. Yung mga nagli-liquidate, they think hindi i-check yung resibo. But the auditor actually checks. Tumatawag siya dun sa supposedly nag-issue ng receipt. And pupuntahan niya to verify kung talagang na-issue. So pag nakitang ganon, na, oy, fake yung receipt, that will trigger a fraud audit immediately. Of course, you look at considerations of cost as well, no? And how much is involved, potentially involved, and the like. Yung Intel funds, the problem is, by its very nature, hindi mo talaga ma-audit yan. There are only certain parameters you can impose, no? Certain things that they cannot spend on. But the basic idea there is, if you have a confidential informant, ang itatanong niya sa handler niya is, sino bang makakaalam na akong informant mo? So the handler will say, ako lang. So okay siya doon. Kung sabihin ng handler, ako at saka yung auditor, naku, hindi na siguro papayag yon. So by its very nature, hindi talaga ma-audit yun. So it's really back to the wisdom of Congress and how much they're going to allocate. But at the same time, one thing you can't deny, and I think I spoke to a Supreme Court Justice in the past about this, and he told us in some of their executive briefings na talagang, there are really incidents, potential incidents that were stopped by the military or by the police, and through the use of some of these intel funds. So it's something you can't really audit because of its confidential nature, but you can't really do without it. And what I say is the only test there is, if nothing happens, then you just presume siguro nagamit nila ng tama. Because you won't have any proof that they were able to foil a plot or what, no? Other than self-serving, sabihin nila, we foiled the plot. No? But apparently, there have been times that they were able to foil, and you just assume that they're using it properly. The corollary is, if something happened, the question kaagad is, anong nangyari sa intel nyo? Hindi nyo na-pick up yan. Ayun, that's when you take them to task, what have they been using it for.
Thank you so much. You know, there's so many questions pala in the chat. Sorry, you should have. Anyway, I would just like to read some comments. No, I probably would have to entertain only one or two more because we're running out of time. But let me read this, Mr. Chair, and you can also see them in the Q&A. Comments from, let me just not name the asked person. Common sense and reasonableness during emergency times are fine, but to purchase 8.6 billion from an inactive one-year-old company with a paid-up capital of only 625,000 seems to be violating common sense and reasonableness test. And the other one is many government offices claim that COA is basically immobilizing their operations, sacrificing the fast delivery of services to the people because of COA's ancient audit rules, not responsive to the situation, etc., or COA's failure to understand and consider the situation. Can you comment?
Well, there are or there have been ancient rules in the past. Yung iba hindi naman. But the problem is, of course, a lot of government agencies hindi rin nila alam lahat. No? That's why we also have, a lot of educational type of activities. And my instruction has always been to provide some guidance. There's some questions that are fair and can be answered that don't really intrude into the audit function. For example, if they ask if the special education fund given to local governments can be used to increase the allowances of teachers, that's a fair question. Kasi they're just asking, pwede ba to? And previously, may mga auditors na, ay, gawin niyo muna, sasabihin namin after. Sabi ko, hindi naman tama yon. You have to, if you can answer it, answer it. If you can't, elevate it. Kahit umabot sa office ng chairman, pwede. Basta it's a fair question. But if you're going to ask, reasonable na ba itong price to? Hindi na tama yon because that is an action that should be done by management. They're the ones who determine that. I-audit na lang yon. So there are questions that are fair. There are questions that maybe are exceeding. Because kung sabihin naman ng auditor na tama na yung presyo, tapos i-review yung audit niya, hindi mo sabi, ko pala nagsabi tama yung presyo eh. O di, may conflict of interest ka na kagad doon. But in terms of agencies, like I said, we audit annually 15,000 to 20,000 agencies. How many complaints are actually received about issues like that? Merong mga iba that may be fair, merong iba na ayaw lang magdesisyon. A few years ago, when yung issue of underspending was one of the topics, the GPPB came out and said the number one reason for underspending is the refusal of certain management of agencies to make decision. Ayaw magdesisyon, yun daw yung number one. It wasn't ayaw magdesisyon dahil sa COA, pero hindi nagdedesisyon. That's the thing. Now, I'm not saying that our auditors are perfect. Meron rin talaga dyan. May mga tinatanggal rin kami, from the service. And that's the most difficult thing when you have to remove someone. No? But for the most part, I think okay naman. If there's certain issues, sinusulatan naman ako ng mga ibang agencies and we try and come up with solutions for them.
Thank you so much, Mike. I can only entertain one more question. So because we're running out of time, but let me just ask this. How does COA ensure independence of auditors? Even before the recent attacks by the president, we know that auditors are constantly subjected to a lot of pressure and even intimidation. Without an independent COA, the people do not have a way to know and check the excess committed by government. Can you comment, Mike?
Yeah, the best way we can do that is show our support. Kami dito sa management, show our support to our auditors. That's why early on I told them that, expect from me full support. Hindi ako nang lalaglag ng tao. If you make a mistake, it's a mistake of the organization and we'll deal with it. But I'm not going to leave anyone out to dry. So as long as they know that they have your support, that's the best that we can really do. Of course, to show that support as well, no? Hindi lang lip service, but actually inform them of that. That's why itong auditors ng DOH, I even told one of our commissioners, give them a call, show them your support. I think they need that. And kumakalat yan because our auditors also, keep in touch through social media. So they know what's going on. So that's the best way that we are able to ensure their independence is we have to stand up for them. Sometimes they might be wrong, but hindi pwedeng ilalag. You can't throw them under the bus, unless perhaps they did something, corrupt. Yun, iba namang usapan yun. I always tell them you have to protect us also by doing your job. But if you do something illegal, you're not protecting us, you're not protecting the institution. So pag ganon, the best we can do is say, we stand by you. That's the support we give them, and hopefully that helps them maintain the independence that they're expected of.
That's so good. And the leadership also speaks a lot, and we're so glad you are there. COA is a constitutional commission. It's really meant to be independent. It has the powers to be independent, and it needs the right people there. So I'd like to thank you, Mike. Salamat kayo. Salamat yun. And I'll turn you over to, sorry, we're running out of time. There are a lot of questions, but Mike, we'll send them to the commissioner, and maybe he can answer them directly or in whatever way, or we'll guide him also. But anyway, I'll turn you back to Edwin because you're running out of time. Thank you so much, Cora. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Mike, thank you. It was a very engaging and enlightening presentation that you made. Thank you for taking your time off from your hectic schedule to be with us. But I repeat what I said, you are not alone. And thank you to Uni, thank you to Eddie and Cora for being great panelists and the moderator. At this point, let me turn you over to the President, President Francis, to award you this small token of appreciation for coming before us to speak. Francis?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mike, for that very engaging, passionate, and enlightening presentation, including the answers that you have given to the very many questions. I'm very truly honored for making time for us. We know that you really accept speaking engagements before private groups, but anyway, maraming Mike. You're as passionate as when you play basketball. Remember our younger days.
Younger days.
Okay. May I have the honor of presenting you this plaque? Copy and the plaque will be delivered to you. The Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines presents this plaque of appreciation to the Honorable Michael G. Aguinaldo, Chairperson, Commission on Audit, in recognition of generosity in sharing his invaluable time, knowledge, and insight as guest of honor and speaker during the 9th General Membership Meeting of FINEX with the theme, The Constitutional Power of the Commission, given this 15th day of September 2021, signed by yours truly. Thank you very much, Mike.
Salamat din po. Thank you.
Eddie, and to the staff for putting this very, very relevant session together. And to the members, thank you for attending. I think I myself have learned a lot. No? There are many things I didn't know about the Commission on Audit. And as Shuni said, Mike, we're glad that you're there. Okay, thanks, and more power.
Salamat po. Thank you, Phoenix.
Don't worry.
Maraming salamat po. Thank you.
Salamat, Chair Mike. Salamat. And let me reiterate my thanks to the panelists, Cora and Eddie, and also to our moderator, Uni. Thank you very much. Before we officially adjourn, we have raffled off several items, including fully paid hand-woven masks and 15 vouchers of free Consulta MD. Mind you, this hand-woven masks pass the DOST standards. So to the staff, to the FINEX staff, will you flash on the screen the winners of these raffled items? There we go. Ernie Santiago, Judith Lopez, Rodora Lugay, Aldrin Dulig, and Oli Lucas, 5 DOST masks to prevent the spread of COVID. And raffle winners of Consulta MD, Abrigo Merin, Teddy Sumulong, Imelda Mangiat, Marivic Españo, wow, Ellen Almodiel, Susana Fong, Lawrence Tiquia, Antonio Ocampo, Melinda Cabase, Eulalio Austin, Rolly Narciso. Wow, Rolly, you're there. Jeng Pascual, good grief. Jeng, congratulations. Romy Bernardo, Antonino Innumerable, and Ernie Albano. Congratulations. You won a free Consulta MD voucher. Okay. At this point, I call on President Francis Lin to adjourn the meeting.
May I now adjourn the 9th General Membership Meeting. Thank you again and stay safe and keep well.
All right, everybody. Thank you for attending the September GMM. This was a most interesting GMM. Thank you to the organizers. And see you in the next GMM. And keep safe, everyone. And let us live and speak the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you
so
too,
much.
Francis.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Uni.
Thank
You
you.
may leave the meeting na. All right.